Once upon a time, stories of fantasy. People suffering with OCD aren't living a fantasy. Even though there are a lot of myths that go around obsessive compulsive disorder, their stories are real. These are stories from the OCD side. Real people, real stories, brought to you by FamilyOCD.com and InvisibleWheelchair.com. We want your story. Go to InvisibleWheelchair.com and contact us to tell us your story here. OCD is real. OCD treatments are real. OCD recovery is real. And so are these stories. Today on the Invisible Wheelchair's Stories from the OCD Side, I thought I would introduce myself. I am Donald Grothoff, and I am the founder of the Invisible Wheelchair podcast, also owner of Focused Healthy Family and Family OCD. And I have a family of 3 kids and a wife. And I wanted to, since I started this because of OCD in our own family, I thought I'd share the story of how it all started for us. And I've written a book on this. I did it as an ebook and then hopefully turning it into a regular book, hopefully pretty soon here. I start out the book by saying it was a dark and stormy night, as in a lot of novels start out with those kind of same words. So started our OCD world when I say the beast of OCD invaded our family. And it wasn't a stormy night as far as rain and storm outside. The storm was really inside. And it was one Saturday night. I remember it very distinctly. I don't remember the date and the time necessarily, but I remember the events. And it was a typical Saturday for us. It was a very normal Saturday. And that particular afternoon and evening, my oldest daughter had a girlfriend over for a sleepover. And the day and evening were going along really well. A lot of giggles and laughter and fun things going on in my daughter's room with her friend. Until I remember it being about 9 o'clock at night. My daughter stepped into the bathroom to go to the bathroom. And something changed in that bathroom. Something happened that I don't believe she knows or we know. But my daughter came out a very different little girl. And again, she was about 9 years old at the time. She came out of that bathroom an anxious, high anxiety little girl. And of course, my wife and I were in our living room enjoying a TV show or a movie. And I saw my daughter come down and whisper into my wife's ear, not knowing what she said because I couldn't hear that part. I was not sitting right next to her. All I know is the exclamation from my wife was, "What do you mean you can't go back into your room?" Apparently, when my daughter came out of the bathroom, she could not re-enter her bedroom because it was dirty. The floor was dirty. Now, understanding that in our household, a dirty floor was pretty common. We have animals now especially, but we had 3 kids. Our house was not a neat place. And so what she talked about as far as dirty was very different than what you might expect. It wasn't anything to do with dust or the dust bunnies or the basic dirt that any household will have over a day's time. She was talking about it being dirty in her mind and that she could not go back into that room because it was dirty. And the real problem was that her best friend was in the room, and she was perplexed as to how she was going to get her friend out of that room, that dirty room. And it led to a night of panic and anxiety where we had to find a way to be able to get my daughter back in the room to be able to go to bed. Luckily, my wife was creative enough to be able to find a series of rugs that we could make a path to her bed so that we could get her to bed and get her to sleep, and which we were able to do, thinking at the time that this must have been just her not feeling well, that she must have just maybe had a touch of something going on, a cold, maybe even a flu or something, that may be causing this kind of panic or this kind of anxiety. Little did we know of what was to come, of the adventure, I'll put it that way, that was to come from the bully of OCD. It was really not so much an adventure as a kind of a journey through hell, because within a couple of days, more things happened. The next thing that I remember was a time not long after that. It was late at night, probably 10 o'clock at night, and I was stepping into a room, I think to say goodnight if I'm not mistaken, and the edge of my pant leg touched her sheets, which set off a panic attack that blistered into a raging argument, a raging event, which was no help for me to be able to become very angry myself, because there was no way that I was going to wash all the sheets, clean the room, the entire room, probably with Clorox, because the whole room was dirty, which led to a battle in the bathroom, which led to what I called the hurricane bathroom, which led to about a 3 to 4 hour battle to a bathroom that was a mess, till we finally were able to settle it down. And that became a series of events in our family that happened numerous times each week for what went on for probably a couple of years, because we didn't know what it was. We didn't understand what was going on, what this was. There was no way for us to really fully understand what she was going through. We didn't know what OCD was. We didn't know what the beast of OCD was. But it was hitting us, and it was hitting us hard. The stress became off the charts. I always say that the stress was so thick in our house that I don't think you could have cut it with a chainsaw. It led our family down a very disastrous path, almost destroying our family. And I don't blame my daughter, because as my wife helped me to understand throughout this process, she would always remind me that our daughter was within that beast, that was in that person that sometimes we couldn't recognize. And we didn't know what to do. And my wife was the researcher. She was the one that found the information, that dug for the information, to find the right resources, to find the right answers to this. It took us a long time. This was a 2 to 3 year process to be able to bring my oldest daughter to a place of more calmness. But like I said, it was so many nights of battles. And it was lucky to be able to have my wife there to share this with. And I don't even like the word share because it doesn't seem like I'd want to share something like that. But we could then become a tag team to be able to, I would battle, and it was physical for me. My daughter got to be abusive, where she would scratch and kick and call me names and do all kinds of stuff. And again, that was the beast of OCD, not my daughter. My daughter is beautiful, courage, strength, all of that. But she would turn into a beast based on OCD. And we had to learn methods and ways, which we did, to be able to calm that beast, to be able to shrink that beast down to a manageable place. Because there was just too many nights of struggling and battling, and many nights when I'd have to hold my daughter down till she literally passed out at 3 in the morning to fall asleep. And maybe we could get 3 to 4 hours of sleep before she would awaken to start all over again. So it is something that I don't think people really understand and know, that OCD isn't just a hand-washing disorder, that it's an anxiety disorder. Because the reason that I came up with the Invisible Wheelchair podcast was partially about my daughter, but it was also about one of my clients who came up with that idea of how anxiety and what we go through inside emotionally, mentally, doesn't show on the outside. So it's like having an invisible wheelchair that is crippling you. That's what it was like. And unfortunately, friends didn't know how to handle it. And I don't blame them. But it really got us kind of into an alone place. Our life, as I say, kind of folded up at that time. I worked, my wife worked, and we had to still go to work, try to eat, and try to sleep. And I say try because each one of those was a challenge. Each one of those was something that we had to do, but it was not easy. Because as I would always say, as I went off to work, many times leaving the house as my daughter's screaming for me not to go, I would go to work, but it was like my mind was split in half. And part of it was at home worried about what was going on, how my daughter was handling things, how she was treating my wife and my young child. And so I'd be working with about half productivity and half of it at home. And it was not easy. It was very stressful. And in fact, during that time of all the stress was when I had my major heart attack. And I, again, do not blame any of this on my daughter. I do blame it on OCD. I put a lot of weight on OCD and its effects and the stress that comes about. That was probably the last straw for my heart. But I came out of it stronger and better. And as I look back on this day, on this time, I should say, I look back and I think about the lessons that I learned out of it, that it helped put me into the place that I am now and helping others. Because I changed everything, at the point of my heart attack especially. But the lessons I learned from that event, that series of events, that time in my life that was so stressful, really turned out to be a lesson for myself and I think for everybody in our family. Because my wife and I had to really kind of pull the family back together and heal the family. And I think we're still in a process, even after 10 years, of really fully trying to heal that. Because as it turns out, one of the, I guess you'd say, side effects of this whole time was that my second daughter, my youngest child, has also come out with OCD. This happened some time ago, about 3 or 4 years ago. And it was like, for us, for me, I know especially, it was one of a time of going, oh my God, not again. Luckily, on the second time around, I wouldn't say it's been easier, but it's been better in the fact that we know a little bit more about what to do, how to do it, and how to handle it. But it's still, even to now, as I'm presently recording this in 2020, we're still going through some remnants of that with my youngest one. But I will say, my oldest daughter is now managing her OCD to a point where she is living a fairly normal life with it. And that's what all you can really expect with OCD, is to be able to manage it and have a method of living a normal life, I guess. So that's the basics of my story. And I don't tell it to garner pity. I tell it to let other people know what the effects of OCD, what it's really like for people, and how it takes over your life, closes your life up. And that also to let people know and to have hope, to know that there are ways of managing OCD. I have to say, the disorders that are out there, the good side of OCD, the better side of OCD, is that it is manageable. You're able to heal it to a point of management. Not cure it, but manage it. And unfortunately, with a lot of disorders, you can't really say that. And so we're lucky in that fact, I guess, that it is manageable. But the things it does to your life and how it affects your life, it's hard to say I'd want to put that on anybody. But like I said, for us, for me at least, I know it's given me some purpose of what I'm doing and the passion for what I'm doing to help others. So that's my story, our story, my family's story. And you can hear my wife give a little bit of a glimpse of her side of it on the interviews on the Invisible Wheelchair podcast. And you can hear my daughters tell her side of it on the interviews on the Invisible Wheelchair podcast also. So you can look that up in the archives under the interviews at www.invisiblewheelchair.com. So thank you for listening. I hope in some way that maybe this gives somebody some hope, some vision of what can be in their life, even though they have OCD. So thank you very much, and take care. So that is our story for this podcast. Remember, we want your story told here. If you want to tell us your success story, or just want to tell us where you're at, simply go to www.invisiblewheelchair.com, then click on the Tell Us Your Story on the top left side, or just click the Contact Don button on the right side towards the bottom. We want to give you a voice to your story. Until next time, keep working on your story for a happily ever after ending.